using
Oh, absolutely. Oh, sure.
but so I'm just curious if knows any. Oh, probably send an email out.
All right.
Just wait. Call meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Gentlemen, I'm looking for approval of the county board minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, a second by Commissioner Winchester to approve the minutes of our previous meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion prevails. Gentlemen, you have the agenda in front of you. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? Tabitha? No?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wilson, a second by Commissioner Lemire to approve the agenda as printed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion prevails. Mr. Chairman, or Mr. LeBlanc.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, always one of my favorite things to do, employee recognition. Sheriff, if you would join me, and Al, if you could come forward, please.
Hope you can come too.
Yeah, right. Before we even take the vote.
Okay, maybe in a little bit.
I can escort her up.
Yeah, we have ways of making you comply. Sean, if you'd like to start, I can take us home.
Sure. So Al's being recognized by somebody that wasn't from the area, that was coming through. I think they're en route to Staples, Minnesota. They had some issues with their vehicle, and they had a tow coming. The gentleman found, or Al shows up on scene, finds out that the tow that's coming is probably over an hour away. He's like, hey, wait a second, I can help you out here. And Al calls a local tow company, and this guy was just amazed with the public service that Al had to provide. And he sent me a nice long email saying, not only did this guy save me a lot of time, but he saved me a lot of money. But this is nothing new for Al. This is something that he does on a daily basis. I continue to get a lot of emails and phone calls. A lot of our deputies, but especially Al Yoders, because he always goes out of his way. And he's always pleasant, kind, treats people with respect. And because of that, we get a lot of positive feedback.
Right, thanks, Sean. And gentlemen, as you know, one of our imperatives is a community-centric mindset. And that was displayed above and beyond. You know, on a cold, wintry Minnesota day, vehicle in ditch. Of course, he checked to make sure they're okay. Oh, you got your call in? Yeah, he could have kept driving on. And he had a choice at that point in time. And he went above and beyond. And at a time in a day and age where complaints coming in against law enforcement, and there's no shortage of that, as we observe that, see it across the country and in the state, boy, it's something special when we get that positive feedback. And unsolicited, it wasn't something Al sent. It did come from the person he helped, but I know it's indicative of who he is as a person. So Al, on behalf of the board and the county, this is a certificate of appreciation. This certificate is awarded to Al Yoder in recognition of your contributions assisting Morrison County in providing cost-effective, high-quality services in a friendly and respectful manner. Thank you for all that you do and for making Morrison County a place that our residents are proud to call home. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Al.
Al, you're awesome.
You know,
Al, fantastic job, my friend. Thank you.
The floor is yours, Al. This is your turn.
Yeah.
I had nothing to say, I didn't expect it, so, yeah, but it is nice to get.
Well deserved.
Al, this is exactly what it says. This is what you do. And you do that. I've known you for years and years, and this is what you do. So, good job. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Now, you got one more thing to do. Back on top here. Come on, Sean. We gotta do this.
Stand back here.
Well, now you get to stand back here.
Thank you.
There we go. All right.
Turn TV off.
Shift this way a little bit. How do we look? Look all right?
Yeah, Sean, get in there a little bit.
Yep.
Attaboy.
Shallow sack.
Looks good to me.
All right.
Looks
Sean,
good to me.
squeeze in a little bit, would you?
Yeah, come on. All right. 1, 2, 3. All right, I'll do one more here. There we go.
Thanks, Zach.
Smile big.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Board.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, guys.
Don't expect this every week.
Next time I want donuts.
Okay.
Thanks for coming home.
Thank you, gentlemen. Gentlemen, next on the agenda, we have the Mississippi Headwaters. Mr. Terrell is here with us. Good morning, Tim.
Morning, Tim.
Good morning, Tim.
So, I always come here early because I have a video to show you, and it's one that I've been trying to produce for 6 years, but I never had the opportunity. So when the opportunity came, I produced it. You always hear me talking about the formation and history. I created a video, I played it at the biennial conference, and it totally changed the mood of the conference. And I've never seen a video ever do that before, especially when I've done it. But I'm just going to play, it's about 12 minutes or so, and then I'll just do some follow-up.
How did you get Tabitha to be, oh, it's gone.
All right, if we get audio, this will be great.
Bob Lessard, who served in the Minnesota State Senate 26 years from 1978 to 2004, has been called a sly fox and the old trapper. But anyone who took him for granted was fooling themselves. During his first term, it was the result of his actions that the Mississippi Headwaters Board became a reality.
Never been in politics before. I've just been elected, and in hindsight, I never thought I could get this done. There's something about being a freshman senator. You think you can do stuff? In hindsight, I never would have done it. I would have thought it'd been impossible.
Known as a supporter of a clean environment, Bob's handshake was his word. He once told a reporter, "The thing that kept me going was protecting the rights of people who made Minnesota the state it is." The federal government and the state often come in and say, "We know best." But hunters and fishermen have been stewards of the environment forever, and protecting their rights is important. It was in that spirit that was behind Bob advocating and passing the legislation that made the management of the Mississippi Headwaters a reality.
It was tough. I don't think I went to bed. It was really emotional with me.
The cause of the concern of Bob Lessard and others in the region was the result of the enactment of the Federal Wild and Scenic Rivers Act in 1968 that had the intention of protecting the natural free-flowing rivers, including the first 400 miles of the upper Mississippi River, which the government wanted to turn into a linear national park. But with the creation of a national park would come federal control, which would include the acquisition and condemnation of private property. Much like had been done in Voyageurs National Park, Bob and others felt strongly that the upper Mississippi would instead benefit from local control. But to stop federal government would take an outpouring of people living in the 8 counties of northern Minnesota where the first 400 miles flowed.
I called all the counties together that were affected, and I said that if we don't get together and do it under local control, it'd be a disaster.
For 3 years, Bob traveled throughout the region, rallying the local people.
So I'd go to all the county boards. What we would do, every time the National Park Service would hold a hearing, I don't care if it'd be Aiken, if it would be Bemidji, if it would be Grand Rapids, if it could be Brainerd, whatever, we'd hold a meeting in the same town at the same time. And they'd have maybe 50 and we'd have 300 to fight the federal government to keep it under local control, to keep it out of the federal system. That we formed what's called the Headwaters Board.
It was a massive undertaking, requiring 8 counties to be in agreement. Through their hard work and support, the Mississippi Headwaters Board was created in 1980. Since then, the board has rigorously acted to protect the first 400 miles of the Mississippi River. But it didn't stop there. Since its chartering, the Mississippi Headwaters Board, in cooperation with the 8 counties, has instituted several programs that have enhanced the safety of the water, made travel down the Mississippi an enjoyable experience, created navigation signage for those who enjoy paddling in a canoe or kayak on the Mississippi River, and supported the effort of establishing parks along the river. One of the first tasks the Mississippi Headwaters Board took on was local zoning.
Zoning it's kind of like a bulldozer. In the right hands, it can do a lot of good. It can shape, make things very pretty. But in the wrong hands, or if it's misused or guided correctly, it can cause a lot of damage. So that's why county commissioners were given this responsibility. That is something so unique about this Mississippi Headwaters Board, is that they have county commissioners and they're here to protect one thing, the Mississippi River.
Yet with 8 counties needing to be in agreement on something as fundamental to the rights of landowners and their governmental units, disagreements happened. So there needed to be a way to settle disputes.
In the 80s, there was a lot of fighting going on between the board and counties and state and other agencies, not out of ill will, but just trying to understand what that law meant. We had our jurisdiction set, but if a county had something that maybe was less stringent than the Mississippi Headwaters Board plan, who won? In the early 80s, it went to a district court and it was decided that the Mississippi Headwaters Board trumps all county regulations. And you got to remember, in this time, some of the regulations that were put on by the Mississippi Headwaters Board were new, they were progressive. Whereas today we look at them and say, well, that makes common sense. But at that time, it wasn't common sense.
Once the jurisdictional duties were made clear by the court, individual board members were able to act with clarity, not just being another layer of government, but being a watchdog, an overseer, because the Mississippi Headwaters Board is actually a regulatory agency. Where the 1980s were a period of zoning, the 1990s were about blending zoning regulation with education and community programs. This included a River Watch program, which got students involved in testing the river. There was also a River of Defense network, which provided spill containment equipment to some of the cities along the river in case there was some kind of toxic spill. In addition, a guidebook was developed to help those visiting the river to learn about its history, what people could expect to find in the areas around the river, and the importance of protecting our natural resources. Due to funding deficiencies in the early 2000s, it was decided that an executive secretary would be kept rather than an executive director to work only with the regulatory zoning authority of the board. This led to the Mississippi Headwaters Board being perceived as a duplicative since county zoning regulations were somewhat compatible with the comprehensive plan. So, in the early 2010s, the Mississippi Headwaters Board made a change in direction and held a series of strategic planning sessions to determine its role going forward. It was at that time that a new executive director job description was written. The board wanted someone who had entrepreneurial skills and was willing to take risks. After interviewing several candidates, they chose Tim Terrell, who understood the need for more aggressive initiatives to add to existing regulatory programs in order to protect the quality of the water of the Mississippi River itself.
So one of the unique things that we started right out of the gate was an idea to assess the watersheds for risk and how much risk factors are on the Mississippi River on these small watersheds that drain directly to the Mississippi River. It was pretty unique at its time because we know in this area up here it's a beautiful place. If you look at it from Google Maps, it's all green, so everybody thinks, whoa, there's not much to do up here. But what we did is we assessed and we found out quite a bit of risk. Different disturbed land, how much % public land were in these watersheds, what did we need to get to call this watershed protected, and we developed a whole chart and process.
From that study, organizational systems and programs like One Watershed, One Plan began implementing this systematic breakdown of watersheds on a larger scale. In addition, Mississippi Headwaters Board implemented a regional stormwater assessment in several of the cities with frontage on the Mississippi. It allows cities and counties to determine sites where stormwater runoff can be cleaned prior to it entering the Mississippi River.
That's what the Mississippi Headwaters Board does. Because it has a leadership role in what it does, it creates the context by which things can get done and by which other implementation organizations can use.
Another program taken on by the Mississippi Headwaters Board are the problems caused by aquatic invasive species, which include zebra mussels, Eurasian water milfoil, and others. To help educate the public, the Mississippi Headwaters Board created Facebook and Twitter sites.
So far, it's been one of our successful social media programs. We've got about 30,000 followers on Facebook and over 7,000 on Twitter. So we are doing really good with reaching people before they get it.
For people traveling on the Mississippi River, a series of navigational signage was produced to allow the recreationalists to know where they are and how long it will take them to get from one upstream river landing to another downstream landing.
When you go to a lake, you pull up, you know where that spot is, you go on the lake, you recreate all day, and you come back to that same spot. You can't do that on the Mississippi River. There's DNR landings and accesses where you can access the landing, but you go downstream. And most people have absolutely no idea how long it's going to take them to get from one landing to the next.
To help paddlers enjoy the Mississippi River and familiarize them with the navigational signage, the Mississippi Headwaters Board created the concept of resource-tainment events, where people can travel the river and enjoy an educational or entertainment event at the end of their journey. Local county and city tourism organizations partnered with the Mississippi Headwaters Board to host these annual events, and there is a coordinated effort to promote these events across the first 400 miles of the Mississippi River.
What I like about working for the Mississippi Headwaters Board is there's an environmental concern, the natural, the recreational, the cultural, the scientific, and historical value that we want to protect of the Mississippi River. But there's also the civic part that comes into it. County commissioners with their wisdom, they're able to take that, what we're doing, and put it in perspective.
And keeping perspective is so important because as the greatest river in the land, it comes down to caring about the river and its importance to our lives. Members of the Mississippi Headwaters Board, working with those living along its path, understand the importance of the river, the quality of its water, the land around it, and the experience of those who use it.
Why should the average person care that the Mississippi River is here? Does it matter in your day-to-day life? Probably not. Does it trigger your imagination? Does it remind you that we're connected from one place to another? That you can start up here in the pines and go down to the bayous and still be connected because of this river? You know, if you're a geologist, it's really not the significant part of the landscape. But for us, it's visible, and it really reminds us of who was here before, where we're going, where we can be.
You know, water is something that every one of us needs. You know, a huge percent of our body is made of water. Where does it come from? Nobody's making more of it. We only have what we have. And so to protect the Mississippi is to protect not just trade, but a major source of drinking water, which protects the health and welfare of everyone that lives up and down that river. From here all the way down to New Orleans. I think education is important about the river so people know why we want to give it some room to filter, and a room to provide habitat, and room so that if you have a house on the river, you aren't on a bend where you're going to get wiped out every time you have a spring flood. Just knowledge is really important. But the Mississippi River is the lifeblood, the main artery of the United States.
All right, so that's the video that I produced. Two things I wanted you to kind of get out of it. One is to ask yourself is, you know, the Mississippi Headwaters Board is a regulatory organization, and number two is that we've got a lot of initiative that I wanted to portray some of the things that you wouldn't read in the newspaper. These are the stories that Bob Lessard has told me that really add flavor and life to what went on. And you know, I just wanted to share that. It's part of this, I wanted to preserve his legacy on that as well. So just kind of transitioning here and closing, when I came in 2013, I presented this puzzle piece here, Mississippi Headwaters Board, Context and Connecting. That's what we do. But I knew I was missing something, I just didn't know what. And if you look there that I gave to you today, there's a package of salt. Because what I found out is we're missing identity. What is our identity as an organization? So I just thought of some things and think of the Mississippi Headwaters Board as a salt. Okay, well, and I got this from reading a book by Charles Swindoll, but it just seemed to apply to what we were doing, so I just used some of it and added some of my own stuff. Well, salt's a preservative, and the Mississippi Headwaters Board is trying to preserve the Mississippi River. Okay, we can get that link. But salt is unlike any other seasoning. It can't be duplicated, but here's the wisdom here. It must be applied before it's useful. It just can't sit there. It's got to be applied. And, you know, salt is shaken and sprinkled, but it's never poured. Too much salt ruins food, so the MHB needs to know, is it a leadership role? Is it an implementation role? When do we step forward? When do we back off and let the local government take control? We always say salt adds flavor, but it's not ever really noticed. You know, nobody ever went to Thanksgiving and said, "Grandma, that was the best tasting salt you ever had." It's never really noticed, but it's always there. It's behind the scenes. And we like to say that we kind of add a zest to the work that we do. We kind of make it fun. I mean, we're doing something good, and, you know, it's something that couldn't be achieved without us being at the table or being there. So I always say, you know, just come work with us, because if it's on the Mississippi River, we've got some opportunities to do. But if you do, just realize it's going to be uncharted territory. The outcome's probably going to be uncertain, but it's going to be a great adventure all step of the way, because we're always trying new things and we're trying to enhance what's going on. So with that, do any of you have any comments, questions, thoughts?
Gentlemen, Commissioner Lemire.
I don't know if you know this, but the Mississippi River by our Charles Weyerhaeuser Museum, the bank is eroding. Mm-hmm. Are you aware of any grant dollars that we could access to repair that bank? And or do you know of like an engineering firm that does that type of research for organizations, either a lower price or free to us?
I did get a call about 2 or 3 years ago. I directed the, you're talking about where the Pine River comes in and where the Mississippi is right there. It's eroding at that bank. Is that where you're talking?
The Pine River.
Pike Creek.
Sorry, Pike Creek.
Yeah.
Pike
Okay.
Creek, sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
And I did talk to them. I did say that, talk with Soil and Water, because they're the ones who are going to have the implementation grants and opportunities that they can access. Soil and Water is really good at accessing millions of dollars worth of funds. It's local. They can engineer things and do things. And, you know, but it is a process. There's definitely things to help do that. You just have to run through permits and some of that. And I don't know if they've ever followed up on that. Okay. But, yeah, those are some things that we look at.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Thank you. Tim, how long have you been the director?
Since November of 2013, so what is that, 6 years?
Okay. And you said,
Well, or it's 8.
Well, that's like 8. Oh my gosh, it's getting by me.
it's taken you 6 to 8 years to produce that video,
Yeah,
right?
right. Or the opportunity.
Or
for
the
it, yeah.
opportunity. And you've been to this county board 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 times.
Sure.
I'm just going to go right out on a limb here. I'm just going to say it like it is. This is the best presentation that you've ever done to this board.
Woo, woo,
Good
props.
job. Good job. Thank you.
Yep.
Good job. Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson.
Tim, I just want to thank you for the work that you guys put into the Mississippi River. Like you says, canoeing down it. There's a, you know, we talk about trails all the time, and there's a trail of the Mississippi River. And in the last year to 2 years, we've done a lot of work on putting up signs on telling you how long it takes to get from point A to point B. And if I'm not mistaken, can't you get an app on your phone that will guide you down the river so you know where you're at? And because I think a lot of people did want to canoe, but they didn't know, where do I get off? How long does it take? And you've implemented that program, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And I just want to say to you as county commissioners, I can implement economic growth in your county. How much did you pay for the Mississippi River to be here? 0. But most people think of, when they come up here, they think about the lakes. The Mississippi River is some of the clearest water you will ever see. When you read about Mark Twain and the Muddy Mississippi, he's not talking about up here. He's talking about down there. We have a resource that you can put your head in the water and see 20 feet underwater in a lake in the Mississippi or wherever. That's totally unusual. That's why people come up here. So the idea is we put the signage up. We've got from Belle Prairie to Le Bourget Park, and then we did Maple Island down to the dam there. So, and it has pictures and it has a map, and yes, you can scan a QR code, and it's like Google Maps, it follows you down. But one of the things that I recognized was that if you don't go with somebody first, then you may not be. The early adopters will do it. Those are the people who will just are adventurous. They'll do it. They'll look at the sign and do it. But a lot of people are kind of, we need an event. So what we added the idea of resourcetainment, where there's a resource where we paddle down the Mississippi and there's an event. Little Falls held it last year. We went from Belle Prairie to Le Bourget. There was a great meeting. You could rent kayaks or canoes. We went down there. It was perfect because it's about an hour and a half paddle. So just about the time you're getting tired is when the paddle was over. You got there was a band playing, there were food trucks. I met some cool friends out there. Of course, you got to splash people in the water. That's just, that never outgrows you, even at camp. It just keeps going on. But one of the things that did is it generated and I said this at our biennial conference, it generated $5,000 to the Morrison County Area Foundation. They were able to do that, and they were able to show it as a success. And we did this in other counties. I created a website now where I have about 6 or 7 events, and you can go to the website. I have a QR code, and the launch is April 15th. But you can scan the QR code, and you can see all the events happening in the first 400 miles, where it's paddle, where it's dragon boat races, where it's whatever. And you can click on a button, and it will add it to your iPhone. Because the biggest thing is you go on Facebook, you're interested in an event, but it doesn't let you add it to your calendar. And so people forget. So you're able to choose which events you want, add it to your iPhone or add it to your Android. And now everything you do this summer is now compared to what's already on your iPhone. And that's the way that we want to do. And it's just a supportive thing. I don't know if it's going to be successful, but, I just saw a few days ago that now Facebook has the option where if you are interested in an event, you can add it to your phone as well. So I'm going to let you guys think that I influenced Facebook, and you guys can I'll just let that naturally go that way. But that's what's missing. Part of the puzzle is you like these events, but you kind of forget about them if they're a month later. So add it to your iPhone. So that's kind of fun stuff that we're doing. And we can generate economic growth for you. That's the thing. The river is an economic opportunity that I say it's like a Lincoln Continental, but it's overshadowed because it's parked next to a Lamborghini, which is the lakes. But it's still a pretty darn good car. We just need to utilize it in a respectful way. And we're going to have an event, our Mississippi Headwaters Board event. We teamed up with Smiles for Jake, which is a suicide prevention mental health organization, and the Brainerd YMCA, and we're probably going to have 1,000 to 1,500 people at Kiwanis Park in Brainerd. That's what they told us that they can draw. So we're still having a paddling event, but it's going to be combined with mental health. So we're not getting the people who like to paddle down the river. We're getting all the people who are just regular people that just want to show up, and they'll show up for a mental health or an affair. The Brainerd City has adopted this as a community event. And they're gonna make the river, instead of a river being as something that we cross or turn our heads away, we're gonna look at it as an amenity, and we're gonna develop riverfront parks, and we're gonna develop that portion. And if you hold events, once people are familiar with it, we did a survey, 100% of the people, 100% said, now that I've traveled this portion of the Mississippi River, I would either do it myself or with relatives and friends. So, it's once you do it with one thing, you're familiar, you know where the bends are, now you're ready to do it. So it's just getting more familiar with it. And as we do that, it's going to start growing and growing. And we could have this whole 400 miles be like the Cuyuna place, in that we do it. But it takes some marketing as well. And that's probably the next step that we'll do in another 3 or 4 years, is look at opportunities to really market this to greater Minnesota. That Minnesota Traditions, we have 45,000 on Facebook, followers. Now just think if we put an event and we put that on Minnesota Traditions as an opportunity. We got to, I don't say it's sold as an aquatic invasive species, and that's how it started, but it's a distribution center. it's the Walmart of Minnesota's reaching the common everyday person. So we can look at those opportunities and say, we spent 6 years developing it and getting it to this level. We can really start producing, having an effect, because we're reaching the people in the Twin Cities and other urban hubs. So I'm just kind of thinking about it. I'm kind of excited for the future, and thanks for that comment.
Other comments, questions? Randy, anything? I'm good. Tim, this board relies on Commissioner Wilson and his representation on your Headwaters board, and we thank him for his involvement there. But we're also grateful that you would take time to come and share with us this morning, and we're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Have a good day. Keep smiling.
Gentlemen, next on the agenda, we have our Health and Human Services Department report. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Brad. Morning, Bonnie.
Good morning.
Bonnie, good morning.
Thank you.
I have with me today Bonnie for 2 items. The first being a collections report. So one of the responsibilities of her unit is doing collections in a variety of areas. And so I'm going to let Bonnie talk a little bit about the collections in calendar year 2021.
Good morning. So I just prepared a little graph here, or slide showing what are some of the things that we actually do in the collections unit. So I think you all know Steve Kostoris is our collections officer, and he's actually really great about tracking things and stuff, so it's made it a lot easier for us to see where our collections are coming from. He locates people. He's the county's, or at least our human services area's, accurate person. He came to us from a collections agency, and so he had experience in that system. So he has taken that over, so it's a really great tool for him to use. It does some of the skip tracing type things that people might be familiar with from collection agencies. So he handles that. He handles determining our parental fees for foster care placement. So he meets with the parents when possible, when they agree to meet with him. And they work out a payment plan if that's what's necessary, because a lot of times the expenses and what the county can collect are much higher than what the parties can actually afford. So he works with them on that. He does some judgment work. So once we get a judgment, we're able to collect interest on that fee. So another revenue source. He also works with revenue recapture, which is taking state tax refunds to apply toward debt. He looks at attorneys or works with attorneys and families in probate actions. So we had just started working with Peter Vogel for the probate piece. So he follows up with him, does the necessary paperwork, and just coordinates all of that. And then, of course, the public assistance overpayments also fall under his duties. So he looks at all of those things, tracks them, and does really a great job for us.
So, excuse me.
Commissioner Jelinski.
If I may, Bonnie?
Sure.
Why do we need somebody to collect? Collecting what? Anticipate collecting money. But you just said overpayment, and I get overpayment, but why else is there that we would need anybody to collect anything?
We are required to collect estate funds for medical assistance. So when a person that is over 55 and is on medical assistance and they pass, if they have an estate, we need to look at all of that. Excellent. And take into consideration what we can take for the county. We get 25% of all those collections. The state gets 25%, and then the additional 50% goes to the federal government.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome. So the first graph I have, sorry, I was just waiting. Okay, so this is just showing over the 3 years what we have projected for our collections to be and what our actual amounts are. So we have increased our collections every year over the last 3-year period. And with this reporting year of 2021, that is our largest collections yet. It can fluctuate because of estates and things like that. Those come in and play a great part of what our final numbers end up to be. But so far, we've been able to increase it every year. So the second graph here just shows what Morrison County actually receives for MA Estate Recoveries. So like I had said previously, we get 25% of everything we collect. So it's a largest category for us for our collections. We were really close to 200,000 this year, which is 58% more than the prior year. So big collections year for us. This next graph is showing our collections for additional programs, the county burial, interest, which I'd said we charge on cases that we're able to get judgments on, so collections there. Foster care, which is the parental fees collections, and detox as well. The two blanks on there, 2019, the county burial wasn't tracked, so nothing in there. And then the 2020 public assistance is blank simply because of the timing and inconsistency of when we get our money from the feds. So the last one is showing our portion of other public assistance claims that we receive. So our numbers for this are 13 to 50% based on what the program is. So those are set numbers, and it's done by the state and fed. So we get our percentages. These numbers include child care, food support, general assistance, housing, supportive housing, MSA, and TANF funds. So all of those combined. So again, the numbers just vary based on what the program is.
So, Bonnie, before we go to Commissioner Wilson and Commissioner Wincher, I wanted to ask the question about the previous graph and the foster care, and that we have a huge vertical line there on the foster care, and just curious if there's a correlation, either you or Brad, if there's a correlation between that part of the graph and the out-of-home placements that we have in Morrison County. We have we've talked about this many times in the past about the increased number of out-of-home placements in Morrison County. Is that relevant to that foster care graph, or are we talking about two different subject matters?
I'm going to say it varies a little bit because depending upon kids that are placed, the resources available to the parent. So just because collections might go up or collections might go down, it doesn't necessarily mean out-of-home placements go in the same direction. Because also we can collect 4E funds from some of those out-of-home placements. So if a family meets the low-income guidelines or the prior AFDC guidelines, we get federal funding for those placements. Those are becoming more and more rare. But there is not necessarily any correlation between what we collect and the number of out-of-home placements.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wilson.
Just for clarification, like county burials, we do a lot more burials than this. This just happens to be people that have some money that we can access to get in. That's how much we've collected, correct?
It's money that we perhaps the family didn't report everything that was necessary in order to make the determination for the county burial. So there might be technically kind of like an overpayment, not the right terms for that category, but so we will then collect from the family if they've taken the money incorrectly and such, so.
And we might have paid for part of the burial and collected on another part. And the other thing that, 2021, we might have collected it in 2021, but it might have been a burial from 2020 because a trust was released or a bank account was found by the family. Sometimes when people pass away, families don't realize how much or where all the money might have been saved for their parents. And so once in a while, we'll get a new bank account, and the families, with burials, families are very good about letting us know when they get resources that could pay for those burials, but it's one of those requirements that we have to pay for burials for those that can't afford it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wincher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question, these numbers that you have here, like your projection collections, that is for Morrison County only, correct?
Yes.
So my guess is that these numbers, this is just a portion. It doesn't include the state or the federal. So if I'm on MA, I might get 30,000 a year from the county, maybe 60 and 100 from if I'm in a nursing home. That's how those numbers look, right?
Yes.
Okay, appreciate that. And then, let's see here, on the collections, and I understand the 25 and the 25, 50, but when you brought up that if someone passes, isn't this all vetted before they go on MA? You're gonna know pretty much what they have, or is it just in case they slip something under the door?
The financial unit makes those determinations as to their ability, eligibility. So my area doesn't get involved until actually the death. So once the death happens, then it comes to Steve to review everything, and then we look at what information was reported by the family. We contact the funeral home, look at that to see. A lot of times they are the ones that know about life insurance policies and things like that. So we work directly with the funeral homes on that.
Most of the time, the family will know, or our agency will know that they have a house, but they're not required to sell it at that point when they go into a nursing home because they can keep one residence. But if MA is expended, then we will look at property. Generally speaking, we'll have a lien against the property at that point in time when they go on MA. But normally the long-term care unit will know all of the resources that person has before approving them for medical assistance.
All right, thank you for that.
Other questions, comments? Bonnie, very, very complete, very good report this morning. Thank you.
And then just one more thing, which is also in Bonnie's realm, and that's the next thing that we have is an updated debt policy. So the state auditors require us to have a debt policy so that we are not having so much debt on our books. And so this is what drives the collections. And really, there's only a need for one change besides the date and a need for signature, and that is that we need to remove including tax offset under social services because we cannot do tax offset after 6 years. So we would still release the debt after 6 years, even if we're collecting from a revenue recapture standpoint. So that's the only change in our debt management policy.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
There is a motion by Commissioner Lemire, second by Commissioner Wincher, to approve the debt, updated debt policy. Further discussion? Further discussion? Further discussion? If not, gentlemen, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
And the chairman votes aye. The entire board voting in favor, this motion pass.
Thank you. Thanks,
Brad.
Bonnie.
Thank
I just
you,
thought I'd
Bonnie.
give a brief
Good to see you.
update on COVID. things are looking quite well out there. We have, yesterday afternoon had 45 cases in the past 14 days. That's as low as it's been. I want to say January 31st, we had like 500 cases. We're now down to 45 cases that are being reported. Again, that's still probably low because of the, people who are doing at-home tests and then making good decisions to stay at home. So, but 45 cases in the past 14 days, 3 of them being kids, and all of those are under actually 5 years old. So it's been good to see now the drop in COVID cases. I think people are feeling better out there relative to COVID. Most of the mask mandates have all been lifted, I think, statewide, even if you talk about the metro area, because of the COVID rates that have diminished so much. So we are actually having another meeting with the schools today to talk about COVID, and I think this will probably be our last one this year, or that was my request to the superintendents and the nurses, and we'll see what they say. But hoping that we continue to see this trend and that COVID is kind of more normalized now, and we'll just have to pay attention, so.
Awesome. Great update on the COVID. Any comments, gentlemen? Anything else for us, Brad?
Nope. Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a great day. Thank you. Gentlemen, next on the agenda, Land Services Report. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Miss Amy.
Okay, I've got a couple things for you today. The first one is to consider the recommendation from the Aquatic Invasive Species Grant Committee, which is comprised of our shoreline specialist, myself, Commissioners Wilson and Lemire. And this, I'm asking for approval to award the 2022 AIS grants to the local lake associations and lake improvement districts. Within your packet, you did receive a spreadsheet of the request that we received, what it was for, and then the total request versus what we've recommended. We did budget $50,000 as we typically do. We did have some returned grant funds from last year, and just because we had some projects that came in under budget. And so the recommendation of the committee was to utilize that returned funds and go a bit over $50,000 and grant that back out. So that's why we're coming up with the recommended total of $53,620 in total grant awards for this year.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wincher.
I'll second it.
And a second by Commissioner Wilson to approve of the AIS grant program. Further discussion. Commissioner Wincher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How does one decide, again, we'll just take one of these lake associations requested so many dollars.
Yes.
How do you decide that, okay, we're going to give you this?
Yes. We take a look at the request and how it aligns with our aquatic invasive species prevention plan. We also look at and try to balance the asks from all of the lake associations and lake improvement districts to make sure if they're putting together some sort of program that furthers our aquatic invasive species management plan, we want to be in the position to be able to grant everybody something if we can. And so really where we take the tweaks then is in the treatment area. If you'll see, we tried to fully fund the prevention actions and the management actions. That's where if we took any sort of reduction, that's where we did that. So that's just really in alignment with furthering our AIS plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Lemire.
And in order to receive a treatment grant, you have to have proof that you had a survey done either in the year previous or the current year that you're asking for the treatment.
Yes.
So that's a prerequisite, and the maximum amount for a treatment is $5,000.
Thank you, Commissioner Lemire. Further discussion? Further discussion. Commissioner Jelinski.
Mr. Chair, I just have one question, Ms. Amy. There's 8 applicants here. Is there
Correct.
anybody that missed applying this year? Or that you're aware of?
Not that we're aware of, you know, these are this is the typical list
Okay,
of
that's
people.
what I'm
I'm not
looking for.
aware of anybody that missed the deadline
Okay.
or chose not to apply
Okay.
from years prior.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything else, gentlemen? We have a motion and a second. Gentlemen, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
The chairman votes aye. Commissioner Wilson? Commissioner Wilson votes aye. The motion prevails.
Right, thank you. The next item also is related to aquatic invasive species. This was a discussion we had with the grant committee, and this is to purchase weed removal tools for distribution to Morrison County boat owners. We do have some initiatives that we like to undertake outside of the grant program that certainly furthers our prevention measures. And this is something that actually a couple of the lake associations that have people at the landings utilize this tool, and we actually funded a small station at one of our lakes last year with this tool. The purpose of this would be, though, to get this into the boat owners' hands where they're circulating outside of Morrison County and they have the means to remove weeds, and that furthers our prevention measure. So what we were looking at is purchasing 250 of these, and then also doing some labeling on these that indicates that these were furnished by the Morrison County Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Program. And so the pricing that we're looking at, when it's all said and done, about $7,200 would be the total with the labeling and the sticks. And we were looking at partnering with our lake associations and lake improvement districts to get these into the hands of the Morrison County residents that have boats. So I'm looking for an authorization to spend that money out of our dedicated Aquatic Invasive Species Fund.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
There's a motion by Commissioner Lemire.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Jelinski to approve the purchase of these tools for aquatic invasive species. Further discussion? Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, gentlemen, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Wincher? Aye. Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
The chairman votes aye. Commissioner Wilson? Aye. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
All those are voting in favor, the motion prevails.
Thank you. The last item I have, we're going to switch gears to the assessing world now, and I'm looking at, in your packet, you did have a resolution that would establish a special board of equalization. And with this would be appointing a couple members to the special board. We're looking at the term beginning today, March 8th, and ending December 31st, 2023. According to the resolution, we would be appointing all 5 commissioners, and then Greg Colomb and Tom Sherling to this special board.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Lemire to approve, and a second by?
Second.
By Commissioner Jelinski. Thank you, Commissioner Jelinski. Discussion about this? Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion prevails.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Amy.
Have a good day, Miss Amy.
Thanks, you too.
Gentlemen, Chelsea is here for our warrants.
Good morning, Chelsea.
Good morning, Chelsea.
All right, this morning, the first thing in the packet I have here for you is an application for repurchase of forfeited lands. The personal representative of the state of Susan Rugemer has came forward with a request, and by law, they are able to repurchase the property with board approval.
So moved.
A second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wincher, second by Commissioner Wilson to approve of this repurchase of forfeited land. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jelinski.
what does this exactly mean, Chelsea? Did the county, by default, get this land, and now this person wants to buy this land back from the county through delinquent taxes? How does that come to be?
Great question. So the property has forfeited to the state of Minnesota because they had unpaid taxes. So it shows here unpaid taxes from 2017 to 2021. 6 months from the date that the land forfeited to the state, the owner of the property, or if the owner is not alive, then any personal representative or heirs of the family could go forward to request to repurchase. So since we're in that time frame, we have received this request. They have to pay all the back taxes from those years plus fees, and then prior year taxes, so this year's taxes.
Okay, very good. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion prevails.
Next in your packet is the cash report for February month end. So this is just your monthly report that you see with all of our funds and balances.
Comments, gentlemen, on the cash report? Go ahead and continue, Chelsea.
And then the next I have on the agenda is to request to approve warrants.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wilson, a second by Commissioner Wincher to approve the warrants. Gentlemen, any questions, any comments? Any comments? Obviously, this is a roll call. Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
The chairman votes aye. Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Motion prevails.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Have a great day.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Good morning, Tony.
Morning, Tony.
Morning, Tony.
So we have the Public Works report. Tony, good morning. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I have a singular item this morning. It's a request for authorization of a resolution to establish a no parking on the portion of County Road 257, also known as 4th Street, near the US 10 overpass.
I'll move on this, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Jelinski. Thank you, Commissioner Lemire, for the second. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Further discussion. Thank you, Tony, for giving us the background on this issue at our meeting last week. I think there's good understanding here by the board. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion prevailed. Thank you, Tony. Have a great day.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Tony.
Gentlemen, I look to Mr. LeBlanc for our administrator's report.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Board. I have two items today, pending any questions for me. The first is an addendum to the agreement between the University of Minnesota Extension and Morrison County. We mentioned this during planning session, and I'm happy to report that in working with our extension coordinator here, they have agreed to primarily house a full-time educator here in Morrison County. So what that means for us is, in addition to the staff that we have in our extension office upstairs, the majority of the time we'll now add an educator to that staff. What does that cost to us? Currently, Morrison County is paying 0.50 of one FTE, full-time educator's cost, and that's an $84,000 cost. So we're right at half of that. Other background that we discussed last week was that the Tri-County extension has now grown to a quad-county extension in an informal agreement amongst the committee. So the Quad County now comprised of Benton, Stearns, Sherburne, and Morrison. Sherburne has been added. And with Sherburne being added, they added a fourth FTE, but in discussion at the Extension Committee meeting, the fourth position was only funded at 0.95. After discussing with the board last week, it was my interpretation that the board would support funding the other 0.05 of the position, which comes out to about $4,300. It's $4,200 this year and $4,400 in '24, so just over $4,000, with the agreement between Extension and myself that that educator would operate out of the Morrison County Government Center the majority of the time. So today I'm looking for approval from the board to pay the additional 0.05 to an FTE.
Gentlemen, wishes of the board.
Motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wincher and a second by Commissioner Jelinski. Thank you, Commissioner Jelinski. Further discussion about this. Commissioner Wilson, thank you.
Matt, do you know, do they pay anything to house somebody somewhere? I mean, I know we asked that question, but do they have to pay rent or anything for a person, regardless if they were in St. Cloud or whatever?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Wilson, I don't know what the other counties may be charging. I do not believe Morrison County charges them rent to use our space.
I just wondered if they had a policy that they pay so much to put somebody somewhere. But, no problem.
Further discussion. Further discussion. Seeing none. Gentlemen, this is a roll call. Gentlemen, the chairman votes aye. Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
Motion prevails.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And the second item was also brought up at planning last week. Our maintenance lead came in before us to discuss a carpet extractor, otherwise known as the large shampooer. Our current machine item is about 18 years old, and as I understand what it was used for in the past, we didn't have the same amount of floor space and carpet as we do today after the renovation. That machine is just simply not capable of performing the required upkeep of our facility here. And this was budgeted in the maintenance and capital equipment account, and bring forward to you today the estimate from Hilliard to purchase a carpet extractor Chariot 3 26 Self 234 AH for the cost of $17,500.
Wishes of the board.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Lemire
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Wilson to approve of this purchase of this carpet shampooer. Further discussion. Further discussion. Further discussion. Seeing none. Gentlemen, this is a roll call. Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
And the chairman votes aye. Motion prevailed.
Tabby.
So nothing else,
Sorry. No.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Just committee reports, unless there's any questions from the board or myself.
Gentlemen, any questions for our administrator? Seeing none, Tabitha, we are at the point where we've got to look at schedules. The dates that we will review are
March 13th through March 26th.
Commissioner Jelinski, help us out.
I'll start it off, Mr. Chair. On the 13th, as everyone knows, it's daylight savings time is going to start. On the 14th, I can pass that. On the 15th, 8:30 in the morning, we've got a planning session here at the Government Center. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we've got an Ag Zoning Committee meeting here at the Government Center. At 6 o'clock that evening, there's a Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meeting, and at that meeting will only be Board of Adjustment. On the 16th, if all goes well, I'm speaking at a driver's training class in Staples, Minnesota at the Freshwater Education Center, which is at Staples Community College, kind of up there.
Central Lake State.
Yep. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning. At 5 o'clock that same day, I've got a Hands of Hope meeting, which is going to be virtual. On the 17th, 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Owners and Operators Users Committee, which I believe is virtual. 18th and 19th, the 21st. At 7 o'clock in the evening, I've got a Good Neighbors EMS committee. That meeting is going to be held at the Camp Ripley Fire Hall on the grounds at Camp Ripley. On the 22nd at 9 o'clock in the morning, we have a county board meeting, followed by at 11 o'clock a redistricting or thereabouts, a redistricting public hearing.
On the 22nd?
On the 22nd. On the 24th at 12:30 in the afternoon, I have a State Emergency Communications Board meeting, which I'll chair, and that will be virtual. On the 25th at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to have a virtual Central Minnesota EMS special board meeting regarding funding. And Mr. Chair, I believe that's all I have.
Commissioner Wincher.
All right, thank you, Mr. To follow up on the 15th, I have a meeting at 6 o'clock at Great River Regional Library in St. Cloud. Just a note, there is no planning commission, there's only a Board of Adjustment on the 15th. And then I have, moving forward, you got that. TCC at 5:30 on the 24th, and that'll be in person in Little Falls. And that'll take care of me.
Commissioner Lemire.
Yellow ribbon on the 14th, and that's all I got.
Is that at the bank building?
That's at the bank building, 101 East Broadway, yep. 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock.
Commissioner Wilson.
The 17th, I have airport meeting. I've got community development on the 22nd. And I've got Mississippi Headwaters on the 25th. That's in Walker at 10 o'clock. And there is no trails meeting this month. I have them all, Tabitha?
Maybe about 11 o'clock,
Yes,
during our
so you do
board.
not have community development on the 15th, it's on the 22nd?
Yeah, I got changed.
Public
Okay,
hearing.
and what time is it on the
Scheduled for
22nd?
11.
I don't know, let me double check that when the meeting's over.
That's what she said.
Okay.
Anything else, Commissioner Wilson?
Nope.
Super, thank you. The only thing I can add is on the 17th, there's a Central Minnesota Crop and Pest Management meeting from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. here at the courthouse. And that evening, the Morrison County Ag Society will meet, and I believe that meeting will be here in the county boardroom. Other than that, I have nothing else to add. Is there any other business?
I just
for
want
the
to.
board?
The
Commissioner
redistricting
Lemire.
meeting's at 11 o'clock, and that's a public hearing?
Mm-hmm.
And we can have public hearings before 6 o'clock at night? I mean, is it to go over the redistricting plans for?
Mr. Chair, it was, and so that's a good point, Commissioner. I will verify that and adjust as necessary.
All right, thank you.
I would think it would be, excuse me, I would think it'd be more appropriate to have it in the evening than at 11 o'clock if you've got public input.
I missed that when we discussed it and plotted it, so we'll make the adjustment.
I do believe it's Mr. LeBlanc and Commissioner Lemire. I understand your point, but I do think it is, I think we are within our bounds to be able to hold that public, we
I'm
hold
fine
public.
with it. I just want to make sure
Yeah,
we are.
yeah, and I understand, I think I understand your perspective on that. You know, I recall in the past where we've had public hearings prior to our board, or, you know, prior to our board meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning in relationship to things with Public Works. We've had public hearings for the ditch authority and that at times of the day. I believe it's within our purview to be able to do that. I would.
know, like at our truth and taxation, I think that has to be a certain time.
I
think, I'm not positive, I just want to make sure.
Yep, and I thank you for that, Commissioner Lemire, and
I have no problem with it being at 11 either, so I'm not saying that at all.
Well, gentlemen, if you have strong feelings about the timing of that public hearing, I'm going to ask you to have conversation with our administrator, and I believe it's Chelsea that also has to play a role in scheduling that. And if that time, if the schedule of that.
It's too late to change it.
Pardon me?
It's probably too late to change it anyways, because it's 2 weeks today.
Had to notice.
Yeah. So, don't
Yeah,
even.
we may, yeah, thank you, Commissioner Lemire, you're spot on.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll verify that it's acceptable that we have it at 11 o'clock on the 22nd, and if it is acceptable, then that's when we'll hold it.
Okay.
And one last thing, Mr. Chair, it's all township meetings, annual meeting today, so get out there and see how your townships are doing.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Wincher, you're right, this, today is township election day, and most all of our townships are holding their annual meeting today too. So we also certainly respect a township government and their input that they give to us here as a county board. Any other comments, gentlemen? Any other input? Any other business to come before this board this morning? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jelinski. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
Good job, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.